Well, everyone, it is that time of year again for us where we are super excited to get back together and talk a little bit more about birds. So, this is Michigan Birding 101, the fall refresher. This is a two-part course that you're just entering into. It is a kind of part B from our spring four-part course. If you haven't seen the spring course, there are videos online you can watch, but you could also always sign up for next spring, and we still welcome you here anyway. It's going to be a fun time. So, let's jump right in. We have a few objectives for our class today. One, as with every one of our Birding 101 classes, the main goal is have fun. This is a hobby for most of us. And we want you to get your question answers and see cool bird pictures. But we'll also help you to understand a little bit about fall migration. So if you joined us for the spring and you're brand new, this is a great time of year to get out and start seeing what's moving around because there is a lot going on this time of year in the bird world. And we'll cover some of that migration happenings. And then we're also going to do just a very brief, like 15-minute or so redux of Birding 101 Part 1, which is how to use your binoculars and how to identify birds. So a refresher for those of you who took it from the spring, or maybe new to you, those that are here for the first time. So let's jump right into it. First off, I'd like to introduce the institution. No, I'd like to introduce our program, Michigan Sea Grant. So this program is provided you on behalf of Michigan Sea Grant. Michigan Sea Grant is a program that's meant to foster economic growth and protect Great Lakes coastal resources throughout Michigan. We're actually a trifecta of program. We're funded through NOAA, the federal department of the government, and we are then run through on the state level, the University of Michigan and Michigan State University Extension. And we do our work through research. We fund research grants. We do education in schools and in with business owners and environmental groups. And we do outreach where we work one-on-one to help business owners or individuals foster their environmental and economic resources. And we do that in a wide variety, but really, if it's Great Lakes anything, which is most stuff in Michigan, we have our hands somewhere in it. We're all spread across the state as extension educators. So myself and these wonderful other people are the extension educators, but we also have some great staff that help us with communications and our research program not listed here. But if you are looking to connect with Sea Grant, we're probably somewhere somewhat close to you, although Michigan is a really big state, so we can only cover so much. Um, and so that's a little bit about who we are as an entity. We'll introduce ourselves as individuals here in a second, but I would love to get to know who's here today. So we have around 60 or so sign up for the class, at least 30 plus here today, which is a great turnout. Go ahead and find that chat feature. This is one of our advantages of coming to the live class is that you get to let us know what's going on and we get to see interact with you through that chat. So if you find that chat feature, go ahead and send a message to everyone that includes your name, your location, and what birds you've seen lately. So you don't have to necessarily answer all three, but we'd love to know a little bit more about you. So I see we've got a couple folks already starting to get into the chat there. While you're kind of populating that, so again, find that chat feature. Tell us who you are, what you're all about, where you're coming from. I'll go ahead and describe myself. I'm Elliot Nelson. I'm based up here in Sault Ste. Marie, so I'm in the Upper Peninsula. This is not Sault Ste. Marie behind me. That's actually Lake Huron, just south of me, still in the Upper Peninsula. And I love living up here because there are just so many amazing birds. About 2 weeks ago, I saw common nighthawks, and I saw about 100 over a farm field. And I just had to stop on the way home and just take in the glory because common nighthawks migrate in a really tight window all together. And I'm an extension educator with Michigan Sea Grant Program. Now I'm starting to see some of our other folks here are telling us a little bit, so I'm just going to share a bit what I'm seeing. Alicia from Ann Arbor, still seeing Orioles as of yesterday. Our Orioles are gone up here at the UP, so lucky you, you still get them. Michelle Raybant from Bay Mills, just down the road from me, and you're seeing Osprey still. That's awesome. Those are a migratory hawk, or not hawk, but raptor rather, and they'll be heading out soon. So glad enjoy them while they're here. And Cassandra from Chelsea, glad to be here. loving the woodpeckers, but true, they are fickle. They do move around a lot. We've got a St. Ignace person here, another Youper. Linda, good to see you, or good to hear from you. And American white pelicans, which are really increasing across the state in the last decade, but still very rare and hard to find. So that's really cool. Uh, we've got someone from Flint seeing the sandhill cranes, and Holton that we've who just loves every bird. Rose from Grand Rapids, your green heron, just love that green heron. Barb in Sutton's Bay, still seeing hummingbirds. Marshall, eagles and tawas. Greg, your teal are one of those amazing birds. Jean from Celine, uh, you right next to the park. That's so awesome. So you're so lucky. And still woodpeckers and orioles for in Harrison Township with Carol. Uh, Cheryl has Kalamazoo is seeing nuthatches, hummingbirds in Midlands. There's so many. I can't get through them all, Cindy. But I think I'm almost at the end. Mary and Peter are seeing chimney swifts and another incredible migration as they come in to roost at night. Vanessa's American bittern on Lake Erie, a really secretive bird. And Brian is very new, but he's here. So thank you, Brian, for joining us today. And I'm sorry, Jay, I see you saying tons of Midland hummingbirds and Annabelle from Detroit. You got a black crowned night heron on the trail cam. No way. That's so cool. Purple Martin Hotel in Oakland is full. That's awesome. All right. I think I got through all of them now. But I just love reading that. And I hope you enjoyed reading that too and seeing, there are opportunities to bird all around the state. And there is a love of birds and a wide variety. Some of us just know that we love birds. We like to feed them. We like them that they're there, but we don't know much about them. And some of us are able to experience some very specific phenomenon like those chimney swifts coming down. So all types are welcome here. I'm a really intense birder. I've been doing it for a long time, but that I'm joined by Cindy, who's also an intense birder in that she loves the backyard and the garden. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Cindy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Cindy Hudson, and I am the communications manager for Michigan Sea Grant. And I am just delighted that I get to tag along with Elliot whenever we get to do birding. He is an intense birder. I am a much more relaxed birder than he is. And I totally love, I used to go out and do a lot more birding, like trips and stuff, but right now I just enjoy it in my backyard. And I want to share with you the thing that was so exciting for me this past year is and on Thursday when we talk about backyard habitats, I'll talk about the importance of having snags, which is dead trees in your yard. And this on the right on the picture here, you see a flicker in a hole. And that is in a snag tree that we have in our yard. And we had the great delight of watching them create this nest and raise three babies this last spring and early summer. And Elliot's going to play a video so you can see it was so cool. You'll be able to see the woodpecker is flicking out the stuff from the inside of the. Isn't that the coolest?
Just throwing the wood chips out.
Throwing the wood chips out. It's like boom, out the door they go, you know. And we watched that from the very beginning to where they created a very large, it's quite a large hole that they create in there, kind of like gourd shaped. And then they set the nest is up at the bottom, and that is we had three chicks. I think they all fledged. We never actually saw them fledge. And the beautiful picture on the right that you see was taken by John Deephouse, who's done a lot of our photos. He happens to live in my neighborhood, and so I had him come over because my little camera phone doesn't do justice to it all. But so that's my excitement for this past year, and I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm super happy that all the rest of you are here with us too.
That's awesome. Yeah, just again a teaser for Thursday about thinking about habitat and not just a yard with grass, which can be nice, but it can be nice to have some habitat. And Cindy's snag there, you notice it's still safe, right? That's not threatening her house. She had it cut down at a reasonable height. That's not going to do any damage when it finally falls the rest of the way. But anyway, really amazing example, Cindy. Thanks for sharing that. Well, that was a bit of the summer, for a lot of us. We're enjoying those summer birds, those nesters, the time to just sort of chill out with the birds. But then things are really picking up here in fall. And fall is a really unique time for migration in that it is different than spring. Spring is a very concentrated migration window. It's almost like all of it takes place in a month. Some species just in a matter of weeks or two, and it's very concentrated. It's very intense, fast and furious. Um, but it's over in a blink of an eye. Fall is a little different in that it's diverse. It's not just diverse in the birds, but it's diverse in the types of migration. Birds really have a lot more variety of migration in the fall than they do in the spring. It's more dispersed. So it's actually stretched out all the way from late July, believe it or not. Mid-July, some shorebirds start migrating back south and goes all the way through December, really, if you count how waterfall tend to move as the water freezes. So it can be subtle to spectacular. We're going to get into it a little bit. And then we're going to start out with the fall migration of the blackpoll warbler. I like to start with this example because this is a tiny bird. So if you've ever seen warblers, they're moving around right now. They're very colorful in the spring, a bit more drab in the fall, but and this bird is only about 5 inches long. So imagine this tiny blackpoll warbler, 5 inches long, 0.4 ounces, right? So an ounce is almost nothing. 0.4 ounces is the same as 2 quarters. And if you draw your attention to that, think about 2 quarters in your hand. A little bird that could fit in your hand weighs 2 quarters. Imagine that. Now draw your attention over that map and look at what this little tiny thing does every single year. This bird that nests up in the Arctic, right in the kind of edge between the boreal forest and the Arctic tundra, way up there at the very north of Churchill to Whitehorse, all the way over to Nome. And this time of year, right now, after raising a family, after being all busy all summer, they are literally going to fly all the way down to Venezuela and even further south into Brazil. So this is an incredible feat that this tiny little organism does every fall. But the crazy part is that these things live more than a year. They live several years. And in the spring, they're going to do that in reverse. They're going to go back all the way up 20,000 kilometers for an organism that could fit in your hand, weighs 2 quarters, and is doing this all out of its own biology. No other machines are involved in this. It is using incredible navigation tools. And just the fact that this exists, that this can happen, that something that tiny can fly across continents twice a year and raise young in between, we should all just be like flabbergasted. I'm still flabbergasted every time I think about the reality of what migration actually is. And this cyclical movement is a feature, a hallmark of birds, in one way that I think we can all really connect with them, in that we are moving creatures too. And if you notice, look at the route that they take. Yes, they're headed from the Arctic to Venezuela, but they could have went down through Mexico, right? They could have went over to the west, but most of these birds that are flying, a lot of them, especially the neotropical migrants, will head through the Great Lakes region. And there's a very strong reasoning for that. That image up at the top shows you the four primary flyways, and you'll notice both the Mississippi and the Atlantic include passage over the Great Lakes, and some even central flyway birds will kind of veer into the Great Lakes before they head back down to Texas. And the part of that is because, one, the Great Lakes are a huge resource of food for the birds. They produce a ton of bugs, they produce a ton of seeds, and so they're a huge resource in terms of food. Especially in the spring, birds time their migration with insect outbreaks. But in the fall, there's also the fact that the lakes funnel birds and concentrate them. And so that makes us in Michigan an incredible migration hotspot. We're one of the best places in all of North America to see migration because of these incredible lakes. And the birds in the lakes are very closely tied together. So in Sea Grant, as a Great Lakes program, we talk about birds because we know birds in the Great Lakes are intimately linked, whether it's birds that consume fish or are part of that ecosystem, or it's birds that provide seeds for our region because birds will poop off seeds, or birds that control insect populations for when those insects do hatch out of the water and become land insects. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of ways that birds in the Great Lakes are interlinked, and Michiganders are interlinked to birds. And migration, again, is just that funneling effect. Um, Now, I wanted to say that migration is impressive, right? There are billions of birds that are going to be moving around this time of year and already are. So tonight, believe it or not, it is predicted over North America, 211 million birds will pass over the US or be flying over the US tonight. That is just a staggering, and that's in one single night. This feature here is this website that I'm showcasing here is called Birdcast. It's through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And if you just want to get a sense of fall migration, you could go to Birdcast and you can actually see the migration forecast because they use weather patterns and what the wind is doing to predict how intense migration will be across the country. So you'll notice that in the east right now, it's predicted to be pretty intense tonight. It's a little bit slower in Michigan than it was the last few nights because of that weather front, but it's just going to keep being steady. And if you look down at the bottom tomorrow night, September 10th, huge yellow lit up all across the central and Atlantic flyways, which means we are going to be bird crazy come September 11th in the morning there. So definitely think about birding, but also it's really cool to see this. If we want to just look at the Michigan specific, so again, you can go to Birdcast, you can see the migration forecast, what they think is going to happen in the future, but they can also use Doppler radar now to actually see birds at night. And based on the density of that Doppler radar, predict how many birds were flying overhead at night. And it's been ground truth more and more, and they're getting more and more accurate with this to the point where now we can give a number as to how many birds crossed. So I didn't pull tonight's number because it was only at, actually, I looked, it's already as soon as the sun goes down or gets close to down, they start counting. And there's already 45,000 birds up in the air over Michigan. But last night, it was 7.5 million birds flew over our state in one night. Is that not crazy? We have 10 million people. So that means almost the entire population of Michigan moved over in bird form last night. So just mind blowing. And if you look at the peak migration there on the right, that was recorded. It was believed that there were upwards of 16 million birds in the air at one point, but 7 million that crossed over Michigan on Sunday night. So just truly awesome. And again, this is a great resource if you want to see what's moving. Not only will they tell you how many birds, you can see all this other data there. I mean, Cornell has just changed the game for birders and for ornithology as a science, but you could even see what specific species are expected to be migrating at night. You'll note that all the nocturnal migrants, so we keep talking about night migration, and this may be news to you that the majority of birds, particularly songbirds, that are susceptible to predators like hawks and falcons migrate at night. And so you'll see that list of expected nocturnal migrants. They're pretty much all the songbirds are going to be night migrants. Waterfowl, except for a few species, and raptors migrate during the daytime more. But your passerns, your songbirds, everything from warblers to robins to blue jays are going to be more of a night migrant. So that's a little bit about, just a broad overview, right? There's a lot moving on. It's a truly impressive type of migration. But now we'll talk a little bit more about some species specifics of what causes or what triggers different kind of migration events. And just want to look through real quick. So, just talking about what triggers migration. So, just for these nighttime migrants, these songbirds like the blackpoll warbler, they're actually going to often be triggered as an obligate migrant, meaning their migration is triggered by an external cue that doesn't have to do with resources on the ground. Meaning, they're not migrating because they ran out of food. They're not migrating because, of some external factor like a drought or something. They're migrating because it is hardwired into their genetics that once the daylight hours start reaching down to a certain length, they are going to start moving. Hummingbirds are a great example of this. Hummingbirds migrate really strictly based on the time of sunlight that's left in a day. And once they start moving, they actually use everything from their eyesight, like stars, they actually use star charts to smell, olfactory, and even landmarks to migrate. So those songbirds are using a lot of instincts, and it's just kind of hardwired and programmed into them. And so that kind of gives us a set known for warblers and other songbirds when they move. But other birds move in these spectacular ways, like waterfalls. So waterfowl move generally when resources become limited. And so they're not going to be migrating based on hardwired factors, but rather when ice starts to form and when they can't get to their aquatic foods anymore. And what this ends up doing is concentrating waterfowl as they move south. So this is a photo from Lake St. Clair of redheads and canvasbacks, mainly canvasbacks, just in the thousands. Um, this is actually a mixed Lake Erie Metro Park. Sorry, not Lake St. Clair. It's literally thousands and thousands of ducks that are all getting concentrated down there. And this may not happen until November once all the Great Lakes start to freeze up a little bit, or even in December. But at that point, these birds get concentrated into a flock that will literally darken the sky and deafen your ears. So migration for fall, especially for waterfowl, can be totally spectacular, can give you opportunities to see masses of birds like we don't get to see very often anymore. And so waterfowl are one of those birds that move based on resources. And as it gets more and more frozen, they get more and more concentrated and into these hugely impressive flocks. Sometimes single species too. There's a redhead flock that concentrates under the Mackinac Bridge. So if you drive over in late November or December, particularly, you'll see possibly these big dark spots in the water. Some people get scared and think it's an oil slick, but it's actually what's been counted upwards of 20,000 redhead, a duck, a diving duck, very similar to canvasback. And in that flock, it's almost exclusively redheads. I have a friend who, on the Christmas bird count, gets to go up and count from the top of the bridge and takes photos. And it's crazy. It's almost all adult male redheads. It's not really known why they're congregating like that, but these really impressive congregations. So some migration can be spectacular in the fall, and you definitely need to get out to see the waterfall. And I'll talk about hawks can be spectacular too. Some migration in is really confusing. So some birds migrate not every year, and some birds migrate in what we call very irregular patterns. So our blue jay is an example of a migration mystery. And you might be saying, blue jay, that's one of our most common birds, right? We have these all over the place. How can there be any mysteries left about the blue jay? Well, take a look at this migration map. So this is from Cornell, and this is going to show the migration over the course of the year. And the darker locations are where they're concentrated more, and the lighter are where there's less. So you'll see how their movement changes throughout the year. Ready? We're going to see how this is how blue jays migrate. Let's give this a watch. I'll loop it through a few times. Did anybody catch that? So if you notice that that density does have a northward push at some point in the spring, but also southward pushes, eastward pushes, westward pushes. The reality is that blue jays, although they have some general north to south migration, they are highly irregular. Some people don't even, some areas blue jays don't migrate at all, but other areas they'll migrate in flocks of hundreds. In fact, right now up at Whitefish Point Bird Observatory, you can go up there during the daytime, and blue jays will be in mass. And some days there can actually be hundreds in the trees. And at some point, they'll all decide to pick up because they want to start migrating or something spooks them. And then they'll swirl around and they'll come down. And they'll all come down to the trees around you. And when you stand there and have 300 blue jays land all around you, the crazy thing is when they land, they don't make a sound, but you hear them still because it's whoosh, 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 whoosh. All these wings flying right by your head. It's just truly incredible. So migration is still often a mystery. We don't fully understand why blue jays migrate, where they migrate to, or how they're migrating, why they show up in huge numbers all of a sudden in different places, and really don't have a perfect north to south migration. Um, this quote is my favorite. All aspects of blue jay migration remain poorly understood, although two general patterns are clear. Some individuals are present year round, and some individuals depart throughout the range, except for these two areas. So basically, we know that some are there all the time, and we know that some move, and that's about it. So lots of mysteries. um, So I did have a warbler slide in here. So talking again about the warblers a little bit, so just a little more in depth. So mentioned these birds don't use resources, but rather cues such as visuals. So stars, suns, the sun, and even the landscape. So some birds follow riverbanks or cliff features or things like that too. Um, Believe it or not, birds have or iron in their inner ears, and it's believed that they use that to follow magnetic wave patterns in the atmosphere, which is again crazy. They literally have a hardwired compass built into their ear. um, and that last one, which I think is just truly unbelievable, is that some birds will learn specific sight sense or scent sites for a very specific place and can follow that or know certain scents to follow. So it's increasing evidence that there is an olfactory component to bird migration. They can almost in the same way that salmon can memorize the scent of a river from when they're born and return to that. There's some of that same thing going on with birds too. So really just really incredible. Not only these tiny little things move 20,000 kilometers a year, they're also using a complex series of sense-based organs to migrate through the stars. I can't get over it. It's so cool. So birding migration can be in a lot of different ways. It can be mandatory because of hardwired things. It can be resource based like waterfowl, and it can be things that we truly just don't understand still that drives it. Now, if we want to talk about diversity, we want to talk. So that's kind of the why, some of the what and why migration. Now, a little bit about the who is migrating. Well, in Michigan, we have 405 species eBirded in the fall. So that's actually more than our spring count, which is a maximum of 392, summer's 361, and winter 276. So when I say it is the most diverse, it is the most diverse, not just even in ways of migration, but also in number of birds. A lot of this is because some fall birds get really thrown off course and get lost. We have around 30 species of warblers that are going to be moving through. Actually, right now, it's like peak fall warbler migration for probably the northern lower peninsula, and the southern peninsula is going to get it in the next few days here. They are just moving through in mass, and they're still up here in the UP too. The last week has just been marvelous up here. Warblers are these really fun little ones. 3 months of waterfall. We even have fall exclusive. A Baird sandpiper is this species of sandpiper. It's not common, but you can see it at certain places. But they only come through in the fall migration. In the spring, they go a different route. And so we have a couple species like that are fall exclusives. Um, yeah, just oh, there's the Bairds up there at the top, which is a beautiful little guy. A buff-breasted sandpiper on the left there, redneck grebe on the right, the bird with the red, and the Connecticut warbler on the bottom there. And like I said, it's also very dispersed migration. So really like mid-July through the end of November would I say be like true fall migration, but you could even stretch it into early July and into December, depending on how you define it. So just to give you a rundown of kind of who's migrating when. Well, first off, raptors and shorebirds, they're going to be some of our earlier migrants. August through September. And this is probably our primary window too, is August and September. But especially raptors and shorebirds, they're going to start early into August and really get moving in September. We also have tanagers, vireos, flycatchers, and orioles that are going to be some of our earlier migrants. You could also include hummingbirds in this. Hummingbirds start moving at late August and will move throughout the month of September, but probably shouldn't see any more hummingbirds, orioles, or these other tropical birds by the end of September. Warblers are a little more stretched out because some of them are heading all the way to South America and they're going to be heading out in August and September. And some of them are only headed to the southern part of the US, like yellow-rumped warblers or orange-crowned warblers. And so we'll see those migrating all the way through October. So there's a handful of species that are pretty strong movement in October. So warblers still going strong. And then, our later migrants would be like sparrows, September through November, especially October and November for sparrows. Really big flocks, very confusing, but still a lot of fun to have new big flocks. And then the blackbirds, which I'll talk about next week as and you can hear about my love affair for blackbirds. I think they're wonderful, but not everyone agrees. And then waterfowl, I really should change this September through December. So they're one of our last migrants in that they often get pushed by ice or food availability and cold and things like that. So they are ones that are prone to linger. All right. Um, One thing I want to do is just give a quick check on any questions. I don't think we mentioned the Q&A bar, but if you have any questions, I'm not seeing any in the chat. The Q&A bar is another place where you can ask questions. So I've covered a lot so far, so definitely throw out any questions you have. Sometimes I'll stop and answer questions as we go. Sometimes in the chat, they get a little lost. We don't turn your audio on, so you can't raise your hand, but you can put your questions in the Q&A section, which should be down in that pop-up bar, or pop them into the chat. All right. So last I said migration is diverse, migration is dispersed, and migration is spectacular. I should have came up with another D. I need better alliteration on this one, Cindy. You'll have to help me. But there are incredible spectacles. I already showed you the spectacle of Lake Erie Metro Park, also same similar things at St. Clair Metro Park. The Eastern Lake Erie or Western Lake Erie and Lake St. Clair are just amazing waterfall spots. But another really incredible migration is the hawk migration. I'll come back to that at Detroit Hot Watch. Sandhill cranes, they may not be in the thousands in Michigan, but we get them in the hundreds, sometimes upwards of 1,000 plus in the fall when they congregate in fields. And actually, coming up October 11th and 12th, from noon to dusk is one of the best places to see big flocks of sandhill cranes, which you maybe have seen sandhill cranes before, but they're one of the most dinosaur-like birds we still have left. I mean, they are beasts of birds and they are really beautiful. And to see three, four, 500 of them come in at night at dusk around a wetland where they come in to sleep for the night as a group before they go out to either migrate or feed before they keep migrating. It's just totally incredible. So if you can get to Big Lake Marsh, that's in Bellevue, Michigan, downstate. But if you're not downstate, go to an area that has big open farm fields, particularly hay fields or pasture lands are going to be a little more diverse and have more food than a soy or corn field. But you can find them in those places. So if you're by farmland, try checking out over the next month for these congregating areas. Up here where I am in Pickford and Rudyard, I've seen upwards of 1,000 in our field. So we get some good congregations up here too. All right, so I wanted to share a little bit about the Detroit River Hawk Watch. So hawk migration is another really incredible one. A lot of spring places get a lot of attention because there's just a really good diversity. But in Detroit, there's a hawk watch that counts the hawks migrating from Canada across the Detroit River over at Lake Erie Metro Park. And the crazy thing about this is that this migration is broadwing hawks focused, and broadwing hawks migrate in one of the narrowest raptor windows. And so on some days, you can see 5,000 at a time. At a time. Some days you can see 10,000. One day, and this is a very special day, they had over 100,000 broadwing hawks migrate in a day. Do you want to know what that looks like? You want to get a sense of just a few thousand? Here we go. Let's take a look. This is a wonderful video from Mark Heinen. Now that looks maybe like a tornado, but if you look closely, each one of those dots is a hawk. Hundreds and hundreds of hawks will form in these large rising air lifts. Basically, as the sun heats the ground, it lifts up air, and these broadwing hawks will move in groups of 10, 20, sometimes even 50,000 in a single group, rising as high as they can and then migrating as far as they can off of that lift. It is truly an experience that will just blow your mind, as many of these migrations will. And so, yeah, if you want to go check that out, again, it's very irregular, so you're not necessarily going to get it every single day there, but you can get some incredible spectacles at the Lake Erie Metro Park at the Hawk Watch, the Detroit River Hawk Watch. So I'm seeing a little. Um, Yeah, so somebody asked how long do these migrations take, from start to finish, and that's really highly variable. Some birds are known to do huge amount of miles in just a single week. They'll just go way up in the atmosphere, sometimes not coming down for days. Other birds, and that's often the case with more of the smaller birds. Some of the bigger seabirds that rather that will do that. I don't know the exact length of time for things like warblers and things like that. It could take a month or so. It could take 2 months. I just know that the push of warblers, we can see it like from week to week across the state of Michigan. Um, but other birds can take months to migrate, like the waterfowl we're saying. So it really depends on the species. I couldn't say for sure, but some go long stretches, days in the air. Others make lots of stops. This depends on the species. But great question. All right, so some migrations are spectacles and some migration is subtle because the one thing about fall migration is the birds are not dressed to impress. In the spring, all of our birds are like ready to go, bright colors. But in the fall, many of them put on drab colors to be a little more protected. So these are our fall warblers. Um, and I just wanted to throw this out that if you are loving warblers, if you start to like them, this is a time where they can turn against you because as you can see, there's a lot of similarities. But if you get the Peterson Field Guide, this fall warbler layout really does a nice job of pointing out some very key features with those little arrows to look for. And also the Sibley Guide is another really great one. And the idea is to basically start to learn to love some of the subtlety of birds in the fall. It takes a little more paying attention to the details, but you can notice no one of these birds is exactly the same. They all have some defining feature. And it also helps you to start focusing on things other than color and pattern, more like posture or body shape. Some warblers have really short tails, like the Nashville warbler, whereas some have really long tails, like the pine warbler is pretty long tail. So you can start picking up on more subtle things like that. So yes, subtlety can be frustrating in the fall, but it can be chance to really build your birding skills. All right, I'm going to wrap up this part here and get to our second part in just a second about refreshing our birding 101 skills. But I just want to give you some hot spots, and this is a great chance too. If you know of a great fall birding hotspot or a place you just love to see a lot of birds in the fall, go ahead and put that in the chat. We're spread out all across the state, as you saw from our intros here. So go ahead and put in the chat where you love the bird in the fall. But I'm just going to list these, and we will email out the list of these places to you afterwards too. So you don't have to scramble them down. A couple good places if you're up in the Keweenaw, one of the best fall birding, crazy rare things show up there in huge numbers. Brockaway Mountain, which is if you've never been to Copper Harbor, it's really far if you live downstate. It's far from me. It's 7 hours from me, and I live in the UP. So, but it is really a place where you can see hawks migrate at eye level because you're basically up on top of a mountain, and instead of the hawks being way above you, they're just right in front of you. And there's nothing like that in Michigan that I know of anywhere else. Whitefish Point is just the migration gem of Michigan. It has I think, the highest bird list in the entire state in terms of species. And they just had a lark bunting there today, along with dozens of warblers and all sorts of beautiful birds. There are some beautiful people there that actually count the birds all fall, and so there's a fall counter as well as a field ornithologist at the Whitefish Point Bird Observatory, and the Whitefish Point Friends of Whitefish Point is another group as well. And both of these groups are actually offering tours throughout the fall on the weekends. So you can look up Whitefish Point Bird Observatory or on Facebook, Friends of Whitefish Point, two different groups, both offering free fall walks. So if you want to get a free fall walk in and you're up this way, go for it. Or plan a trip. The Detroit River Hawk Watch, like we talked about, that's a good one. There's also some other hawk watches, and Lake St. Clair is a really good one. There's up in Port Huron and also in um, at Port Austin at the tip of the thumb, Crescent State Park. These are really good locations. Peninsula Point over on the side, Muskegon Wastewater, and the Tiscarini Park in Holland. I just pointed out really those extra ones to kind of emphasize that coastlines are going to be really good spots. If you can find a coastline, you're going to find a really good spot. The three that I listed here, the Whitefish Point, Detroit River Hawk Walk, and Brockway Mountain, those actually have active migration count organizations where there's a staff member or volunteer there every day in the fall counting birds. So I wanted to highlight those three um, just for that fact. But there are lots of good places anywhere you go along the coast. Or you may be inland too. And there are birding trails that can cover you inland as well. I'm not going to go too in depth with this because I want to get to our next part. This was covered in our spring class, but if you go to michiganaudubon.org and look up their birding trail site, you can get to each of these independent websites that give you great tips on how to where to bird in your area. I'm going to come back to this one if anybody wants to know about fires and fall migration. We'll do it in the Q&A. um, but I'm going to see real quick if we have any question. Cindy has been populating the chat with all the links that I keep throwing out. So thank you so much for doing that, Cindy. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to save that other question that's in there now for the end too. All right. Keep putting questions in though if you have any questions. So now it's time, if you have binoculars, to get some binoculars. Like grab them. Like grab your binoculars. I think I left mine in the car. Oh, the worst host ever. All right. But I will be describing what's for you to do. So no worries here. So we're going to cover again, this is in our Spring Birding 101, our first class. We covered how to use your binoculars. And so if you want an in-depth look at this, go to our video on our Michigan Sea Grant website that has our Birding 101 from the spring. You can watch that. But I just want to remind you, when you're using your binoculars, uh, first off, you need to just get comfortable with them before you even start looking at birds. So what you want to do is you want to use your center focus. So that's going to be right in the center of your binoculars, and you want to get them in focus on something. Then a lot of times people will see double or black around the edges, and that's often because the hinge needs to be adjusted. So your two eyes are different lengths apart depending on what kind of person you are or who you are. And so you may have to adjust the distance between those two upper or the oculars on the top. So go ahead, if you have binoculars with you, just give a look through them and you want to see a single clear image. And again, you got to use that center focus to just get it so it's clear, and then use the hinge to move it outward or inward until you have a nice clear single image. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're familiar with your binoculars. The second thing is the diopter adjustment, which is essentially some binoculars have an extra adjustment on the right eye focus. You can see that on that image here, which allows you to adjust that right eye just a little bit, because all of us have eyes that have different strengths often. And even throughout the day, one of our eyes can become more tired than the other. And so what you want to do is you get focused on the left eye with the center focus, and then you look through the right eye and adjust the diopter. So just wanted to send those reminders out there really quick. We're going to practice actually identifying some birds, but not a lot with our binoculars here. So the next thing with your binoculars, as a quick reminder, is to keep your eye on the birdie. That's all it really is, okay? A lot of people, when they hear there's a bird somewhere, will instantly lift up their binoculars and start looking for the bird. Unless we're talking about a bird that's like 100 yards away or like on the other side of a lake, and you need to like scan for it, you need to find that bird with your naked eye first. If it's a bird that's 50 yards away or less, it's really going to be easier if you find that bird with your naked eye first. So you look for the bird, you might see movement, you might see trees where it's around. And once you find that bird, lock your eyes onto that bird. Don't leave the bird. Never stop looking at the bird. As you're looking at the bird, you simply just lift your binoculars, and hopefully you're looking still at the bird now with your binoculars. So again, the key is for birds 50 yards or closer, and that's a rough rule. You want to find the bird first before lifting your binoculars. Lock eyes on that bird. Don't stop looking at it. It's probably going to be moving around. So you need to just focus on that and then just sort of instinctually lift your binoculars, and you should be looking at the bird. All right. All right. That's our little refresher on how to use the binoculars. And now let's do a little bit of field work. And so we're actually going to try to identify some birds together as a group here now. Although please don't say the species of the bird until we kind of come to a conclusion together as a group. So um, this, of course, you can say if you want, but we've talked about them quite a bit. On the right is the sandhill cranes there. And so when you see a bird like this, the first thing, again, is to observe the bird. And like we said, lock eyes on the birds. You don't look away. So you lock your eyes on that bird, you observe the bird, and really for most birds, you're not going to get that much time with them. Now, sandhill cranes may actually be an exception. They're a bird that might just stay there for an hour and hang out. But a lot of smaller birds, especially, are going to be moving very fast. So you really don't want to start looking in your field guide until you've consumed as much of a look at that bird as you can get. And as you're watching that bird, try to take notes of things. We'll talk about what to take note of. After you've fully satisfied with your look at the bird, you really think you've studied it, you've gotten as much as you can out, then go ahead and try to take a picture or take notes. A lot of people think you have to take pictures to identify birds. That's not true at all. I never did. I never will. I mean, I will take pictures, but I don't like to. So I'd rather just take some notes. And either way, this is going to help give you an imprint of what you saw that you then have a record of before you start looking through pictures. Because as soon as you open that field guide and you start looking at pictures of birds, you're going to get confused as to whether what you saw was in the book or was it in the bird you just saw. And quickly, our brains will start filling in the gaps of one or the other. So, any kind of information you can record before you open your bird book is going to add a lot of help with your brain's ability to differentiate what you saw and what's in the book. And then finally, after you take those notes, then you consult your field guide. So let's identify this bird. Please do not put in the chat the name of this bird, but I want you to put your observations. And when I talk about observations, if you were in the spring class, again, don't put the name of the bird, but put the observations you're noticing. What's the structure of this bird? How would you define its body shape? How about patterns? Do you see any patterns? You could talk about color a little bit, but really patterns are even more. How about relative size? And in this case, well, we see a sunflower seed and speak. So that gives us some idea of a size if we know what a sunflower is. But also, what's the size of the bird's bill compared to its head? What's the size of the bird's tail compared to its body? Do these things have a short tail compared to the body or a long tail compared to the body? And that will give us something to reference, right? The sizes like long and short and tall, those only have so much usefulness unless we give them some sort of reference point. And also behavior is another one. So we've got one person bold enough to put observations in there. We've got 40 people on the chat here. So go ahead and start putting some more observations in. But Alexandra, thank you so much. It does have a very short tail compared to the rest of its body, right? Compared to its wings, it's way shorter than its wings. It's way shorter than its even than its rump area. So Rose, small isn't necessarily the best observation, but you can say that it's smaller than maybe a robin, right? If we know that, yes, Kate just said it at the same time. Smaller than a robin now gives us a reference point because small could mean anything, but smaller than a robin, now we have a reference point, right? We see seed eater, Vanessa, great, because that's actually a habit or a behavior that it's doing. And we also see, very, very short legs and thick neck, head, and body, right? So some of the ways we can explain this is almost like a tubular body and really almost non-existent neck and really short legs. The white breast contrasting with a dark upper, like totally white and blue-gray above. That's really nice explanation there. And we're also seeing the line coming off the eye in that it's almost a black hood. That's a really good explanation. Black hood, like that. We start to use these kind of human-based things sometimes, but the white cheek. So the black is all the way up at the top, but the cheek, the face, that's all still white and underneath. We're kind of getting where that line between dark and light is. So these are all really great observations. It's also so a lot of perching birds tend to be kind of perpendicular to a branch when they perch, but this bird is a bit more parallel to what it's perching on, right? It's almost like if that was a branch, it'd be in line with the branch instead of sticking up from the branch. It's like along the branch, right? So that's another key feature. Um, so then we've taken our notes now, we wrote them down, and it's time to consult our field guide. Um, all right. So in our field guide, we have a lot of different birds, but there's another one here. I don't know why I have both species here, but in our field guide, this is the hardest part is once you've gotten a good idea of the bird, figuring out what category of bird it might be. And by category of bird, I mean things like sparrows or orioles or ducks or swans or herons, right? I don't have a great yet way to teach you how to know the different groups right away. What I can say is the more you familiarize yourself with your field guide, your bird book, or if you use Merlin, the easier it'll get to start recognizing the different categories of birds. And that's a skill that takes some time, but still, even if you don't know the category, you could start flipping through until you find these cylindrical shaped birds that are walking almost like a woodpecker does on a tree, and those are our nuthatches. And when we look on the nuthatches, there's actually only one, two, three, four nuthatches and a creeper. Four nuthatches and a creeper are what you're going to find in most North American bird books. And so we start to look about, okay, which one did we have there? So go ahead and put your guess in now if you know. I think there might be a few guesses in there, but yes, you got it right away. He was on the line there, ready. The white-breasted nuthatch. So if we look out of all these nuthatches, and I'm going to annotate here. I just put two side by side. So the white-breasted nuthatch, which I'm going to circle right there in red. Actually, I want a brighter color than that. I don't know why that's so dark. Okay. All right. So there's the white-breasted nuthatch. You can see it at a totally different angle and look here, right? Because birds are never going to look exactly the same. But again, that black cap is a really good demarker. If we're looking at this bird next to it, we can notice a few differences. What are some of the differences of the second bird I just circled? If you have the chat still open, you want to share what are some features that are different? Like how we could see these are both similar shaped body. Yeah, rusty chest, Vanessa. Right. So that's one thing that sticks out right away. It's not white all the way through, and then the stripe through the eye to the neck. That's one that honestly, for me, for the great job. Those are like the two key ones. And if anyone knows, you can say what the second nuthatch is. See if anyone can get it. It's the red-breasted. Yes. So these are our two Michigan nuthatch species. Um, for me, for the longest time, I always just looked at the breast. That was it at the at the underside of the bird to see if it was red or white, right? And I was red-breasted nuthatch. I looked for the red. White-breasted nuthatch. Look for the white. And believe it or not, there were sometimes I couldn't identify a nuthatch because I saw it from the top, and because the way they walk down trees, like they were just hiding the underside completely. And it took me years till I finally realized, oh my gosh, the red breast nuthatch has a black eye line, like the white one doesn't. So it's really that's I just share that story as a way to kind of help you understand that identifying a bird is about putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. Yes, can be key features that sometimes are just so obvious that we just focus on that, like a cardinal. It's a big, bright red bird with a huge crest, right? Okay, crest, that's a crest red, done, but with other birds, we have to put the pieces of the puzzle together, especially with some of our fall birds. So just showing you that, it can sometimes take a little while, but when you start really focusing on multiple features, the more evidence you have, the easier it becomes to kind of tease out what you're looking at. All right, here's another one. Let's go again. And let's see who can identify not the bird, but some features of this bird. So, yeah, so go ahead and start guessing some of the features. And again, remember, we want to try to do relative. So short beak's not a bad explanation. It's definitely a shorter bill. It doesn't even go as far as the eye is back. It's also, a little pink. Nice, Alicia. Yeah, it's pink as well. And again, this is a no neck bird, so very kind of chubby, stubby little bird. Very black, gray top, white belly, right? If we were thinking about patterns, there's really only a couple primary patterns or colors we're seeing here. Yeah, so gold legs and black feet. And this is a good one where color and where again you have to add a lot of features. So this bird does have black feet. I will say this bird probably has black feet because there's mud on them. And so just be careful to recognize that sometimes some things might not fit with everything else because birds can get mud on them. Birds can get injured. Birds can have a feather out of place. So there are those variations sometimes. White stripes on tail is a really good one too. And I should say though, leg color can be a very helpful ID key as long as you're sure it's a true color. But yeah, white outer tail feather, that's another really good one. All right. So these are a lot of helpful key features, and these are little chubby brownish birds that are grayish birds that we're going to get here in the next few weeks, or we already have if you're in the UP. Um, does anybody know what group of birds this would be in? So this is, I don't have any size references here, but I'll say this is a bird smaller than a robin, larger than a chickadee. And so that might put it into the sparrow group. And yes, that is what group this bird is in. If you didn't know that, that's like totally over your head. Don't worry. Like I said, that's one of the harder things is the groups of birds. Just time to buy a bird book and start looking what the ways that the bird book groups them up. Um, but if we open the sparrows in the Sibley Guide to the Birds, we can start to cross off the birds we know it's not. So, we're looking for something that's dark and light, kind of two-tone, and that helps us rule out a lot of these brown streaky birds and these brown streaky birds and these brown streaky birds and a lot of the other streaky birds. So sparrows are mostly brown and streaky, and so in some ways we're really lucky that we don't have a streaky bird here. That kind of then gets us down to just a few of the more solid colored birds. And the thing is, none of the birds in this page look like this bird, right? So we kind of have to start thinking about, well, we could just look at the species account for each one of the ones we didn't cross off. That would be helpful. I think we could also start to cross off the ones that don't have a light underbelly, right? And so that helps too. But then we could flip to these different sections, maybe cross this one, to look through. And when you get to what this bird is, you'll realize there is some variation here. And so this bird, you can put it in the chat if you don't see it already, is a dark-eyed junco. And so this is in the sparrow family. And this bird has a lot of variation across the country, but most of our birds in the eastern US are going to look like the males, which are really dark, or the females, which are a little more brown, but still that dark above, light below, pinkish bill. And we are spot on right there with the dark-eyed junco. So again, not always a straightforward process, but if you have those key features written down, you will start to find that the more you get used to your bird book, the more you get used to the groups of books, the more success you'll have at identifying birds. And once you start to identify the common ones, you'll realize that you've got a lot of them down. In fact, you might even realize you already have a lot of them down, like blue jay and chickadee and cardinal and robin. You probably have a dozen to 2 dozen birds you can already identify. And as you start to get used to these migrants and ones that you see less often, your list of birds will just grow and grow that you can identify. And that way, when you run into some of the more rare ones, you can definitely uh, yeah, you can give it a shot. So I'm not going to do a full ID on this one. I just wanted to show that this is an eastern phoebe, which is a type of flycatcher. Um, but I wanted to show the little video here of it bobbing its tail to say that some birds, by behavior, there's some birds have really unique behaviors, and eastern phoebes have this one where they bob their tail up and down, which makes them a really easy one to identify. Another one I can think of like this is spotted sandpipers. Spotted sandpipers are a shorebird that you'll see on rocky shorelines in Michigan, and they also have a bob, although it's kind of their whole body where they go up and down, they bob their tail and they bob their body, and it's a very, if you see that motion, you know exactly what species it is. So sometimes it gets really easy as you learn the behaviors of birds. All right. Well, that kind of wraps up most of our stuff for today. I'd like to just throw out, again, Birding 101 Spring Course covers a lot of field guides, but if you don't have the Merlin Bird ID app and you don't have a bird guide, get this app right now. It's free. It's going to help you identify birds. It's a bird book in its own. And last but not least, there are common pitfalls. We covered a little bit, like over relying on color or being careful with color enigmas. Size, again, it's always better when you're saying the size compared to something. And what we talked about with expectations memory. But in the end, remember, it's okay not to identify every bird. The point is to have fun. if you're just starting, there's no way you'll be able to identify every bird. If you're identifying every bird and you just started, go birding with some other people. um, and yeah, but the more you bird with by yourself and with others, the easier it'll become. So
Hey, Elliot, great presentation. Thanks so much. Right now, that folks, for those of you that are on, that's the end of the presentation, but we are going to stay on and do a bunch of questions and answers. So please put them in the Q&A. And if you are leaving, please be sure to come back on Thursday.
thanks for joining us.
Bye.